Cineboys to Cinemen, episode 51.
51.
Hope you're well, wherever you are, whatever you're doing.
Yep.
It's been a while, while, since our 50th episode, formative film.
Yeah, that was a couple
discussion.
of weeks ago.
Yeah, that was a good one, that.
I did like that.
I listened back to it, and I felt like I came across quite ranty.
I didn't hear that. I mean, we both clearly listened back to it. That's probably why it's got 3 views. I don't know. I didn't get that. So
no,
I think we're okay.
I'd also like to point out, I think I was being critical about past college students. So I remembered I was that exact student who'd watched nothing. In fact, I got so bored of my media course halfway through that I tried to leave to do A-levels, but I was so shit in my course they didn't let me.
Oh no!
So I had to go grovelling back to my media lecturers who thought I was a knob anyway. Yeah, so I just want to apologise.
It's on the record now.
It's on the record, yeah.
Good.
Done it. Been holding on to that for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, you've been on holiday.
You seem lighter. You look lighter now. You've sort of,
Yeah.
You've dispensed that information. Yes, I have been on holiday. Yeah.
I was glad you were going to pick that thread up.
Yeah. Took me a while.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I went to Italy for a bit to see fellow Cineboy Daniel Mackenzie, along with Alfie Martin as well. Both. Well, actually, only Alfie's been on the podcast, but
I think Dan wants to come on next time he's in England, doesn't he? So we really look forward to that.
That would be good.
Oh yeah, brilliant. So this week we are talking about Civil War. Alex Garland, Civil War.
Yeah.
Hotly anticipated, big money A24 release. That I think in the sort of grand scope of their trajectory as a film production company is arguably their most visually ambitious film.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're going to talk about the film as it's sort of like a window into a dystopian future. We'll rattle on about that, and obviously talk a little bit about Garland as well. We'll weave some of that in, some of his previous work.
Absolutely.
Which, as we were discussing in preparation for the episode, dystopia seems to be a very common theme. Yeah,
I was saying to you, he wrote Never Let Me Go, which is a dystopian vision of the future. 28 Days Later, obviously, is a very overt dystopian piece of work. Annihilation, arguably, 'cause it's inspired by Stalker, another very dystopian film. Yeah, so it's all over all of his work, really. I mean, you could even argue Ex Machina is more of a sort of utopian, verging on dystopia kind of situation.
Yeah. As these films tend to be when they wrestle with stuff like AI and robotics.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's stop that.
Let's stop it.
And have a brief intermission and then continue the discussion in a minute. Questing the cinematic void. Okay, so dystopian cinema. I guess we should sort of take a few stabs wildly in the dark in an effort to ascertain its, I guess, sort of constant popularity.
Yeah.
Since its sort of arrival. I don't know, I can't even think what the first dystopian film would have been. Maybe Metropolis?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. What the sort of appeal is, because I found this more recently whenever you talk to people, for example, about climate change.
Yeah.
People don't really want to discuss it. And I'm not saying it like I'm someone that likes on the forefront doing everything, but I just mean that when the conversation comes up, a lot of people don't want to talk about it because this sort of looming existential threat.
Yeah, it feels very real.
The potential for sort of like the annihilation of the human race, all that sort of stuff. It's terrifying for people to discuss, and yet dystopian stories in culture, not just films, are incredibly popular.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, their appeal is baffling. I love them though. I'm trying to sort of put my finger on why. I think I love the ones where it's not my fault that it's happening. Whereas obviously anything about climate change is like we've all got a carbon footprint, haven't we? So it's like the collective.
All those times we've driven to the shop and we should have walked.
All the
times we fell asleep with all the lights on.
Yeah, just today I had like this big bright monitor on, and because the thing I was working on looked really colourful. I was like, and then someone else went in and was like, do you want to turn that off? It's like really expensive to. Like, oh yeah, of course. So like, I don't know. Maybe it is something to do with like feeling culpable, I guess. And when it's out of your hands, like, for example, something like Blade Runner, that's the kind of, I mean, I get the impression that it's not really humanity as a whole's fault. It seems to me like that future has been created by a lot of higher ups.
Right, okay.
Same with something like Dread. Then the Judge Dredd thing, like the 2000 AD. But, then you have films like Downsizing, which have that kind of climate change thing running through it. And it did really badly, and it wasn't very popular with anyone.
No.
So, yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons why. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there, because I think we all have a part to play in the upcoming troubles. So maybe people are a little bit more sort of reluctant to engage with that side of things. And I think you might be right, sort of more broadly, in terms of the way it tends to link quite well with sci-fi. And again, about sort of making broader comments about the nature of human civilization itself. Capitalism, for example, seems to be a very common thread in a lot of dystopian works.
Yes, privilege as well, like
privilege.
Clockwork Orange. I get the impression that those boys aren't poor.
They're
very kind of wealthy, sort of almost like kind of Wall Street bankers, just going around being disruptive because they can.
Right.
But a very weird. Oh, I know they're younger than that in the film. They're meant to be in their sort of late teens, aren't they, or early 20s?
Yeah,
but they're not like portrayed as having no choice. They kind of have chosen this life of debauchery, and the kind of their surroundings are sort of shaped by that, I think. Anyway.
Yeah. I think excess is a particular theme, I think, of a lot of dystopia. Dystopian cinema, but I do think it does boil down to like often an exaggerated version of the world that we live in. Or depending on your sort of ideological position, anyway. I think a lot of people hone in on these elements of these sort of dystopian worlds that tend to be worlds that have been destroyed by wealth, power, greed, and the sort of manifestations of those things. Weapons, war, all that sort of stuff.
Over militarization.
Exactly.
And there's always like a kind of, there's usually a sort of tower block which houses the person. I'm weirdly thinking of like Day of the Dead.
Right.
There's a lot of this kind of stuff in it, which and there's like the tower block with the person literally at the top. And like Back to the Future Part 2 as well, with Biff Tannen.
Right.
Basically, like an extreme example of Donald Trump. And in his big tower, there's usually that kind of imagery in a lot of sort of dystopian films. It's off the top of my head, anyway.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of authors and filmmakers, they see something about either then contemporary society, and it obviously haunts them enough that to think that if this stays or grows like a sort of malignant tumor, it will eventually become the thing that pushes humanity towards its destruction, or to a sort of hierarchical system of subservience to an idea or a collection of individuals that that have managed to sort of clamber the way to the top because of wealth, etc. I always find that really interesting, that there's an appeal to that. I wonder if the appeal is because it sort of shores up people's belief about the world, about where the world is going. Maybe there's something, you talk about film as therapy when we talked about the horror films in our formative films, and maybe there's something therapeutic about entertaining a lot of these sort of worries, anxieties, and in maybe some cases conspiratorial elements of your belief system that inform the way you see the world, and maybe the culture that you desire to see.
I think the key word is it's an extreme. Extreme. It's an extreme example of what might happen, and that almost borders on satire. Then, when it's an extreme example, it's like a heightened version of what people's vision of the future is like, and that's sort of quite funny to people. I think it's sort of it's having your kind of worries confirmed, but in a way that's hilarious, not necessarily in a way that's troubling to you, because the real outcome might not be that extreme. Or there might be some kind of intervention from to stop it from becoming that extreme. Whereas, watching an imagined version of the world where that doesn't happen is kind of like entertaining in that way, maybe, I'm thinking.
They're also sort of cautionary as well, aren't they?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the artists that make these kind of pieces of work are intending for them to be cautionary. The way they're digested, like you talk about sort of temporary moral realignment, I think it's a bit more of a grey area. Like some people would take that kind of thing and adjust their lifestyle accordingly, but some people were like, that are outraged by it and then swiftly return to their normal, leaving monitors on, etc.
Yeah. It's hard to pull you away from just normal life, isn't it? And I think there's always going to be, I think we've talked about this a lot in the context of sort of temporary moral realignments, but I think that's sort of a broader criticism, I guess, that can be levelled at any multi-billion-dollar industry. And it doesn't necessarily have to reflect poorly on the creatives within it, but it's definitely an area of discussion, which I think we mine quite a lot, actually.
Absolutely.
I do think it's interesting, and I think it seems to marry particularly well with sci-fi, particularly well with horror as well.
Yeah, especially zombie horror.
Yeah,
completely.
Right.
Even the naff ones like Resident Evil, there's a sort of charm to those as well.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's absolutely the whole. That whole franchise is built on the idea that a corporation would willingly develop a virus.
What's the name of the company?
Umbrella.
Good man. Yes.
And obviously they're not just films; they're also started out as a video game franchise. Like Konami, was it?
Capcom.
Shit. But it's the same. It's all coming from the same sort of melting pot of ideas, I guess.
Yeah.
The inspiration, obviously, largely Romero, who had his own.
King.
Absolutely. I guess each of the sort of Dead films that he's made has a different kind of moral through line.
Exactly, yeah. Like Night of the Living Dead is very much, it's in that sort of vein of the horror films of that time. I think we've talked about this quite a lot, but it's like, in pushing human beings, previously upstanding human beings, into these sort of apocalyptic situations, you see their behaviour and see how the society they've inhabited, or the role in society they've inhabited, instructs their behaviour in times of difficulty or tragedy. And I think it's particularly the case in Night of the Living Dead. It's very much about race, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's, I think, really well done. I mean, like, obviously it's quite dated and it's an old film in terms of its sort of presentation, but it's brilliant. It's, to me, it still stands up as one of the the best movies of its genre by a mile. One of the greatest horror films ever made. I just think Romero often doesn't get enough credit for that. His sort of, the way in which he weaves those sort of thematic ideas through, these films. And then the second one is
Dawn of the Dead.
Dead, which is
a lot of very
consumerism,
and that kind of thing.
And it feels overt now.
Yes, actually, at the time,
and
cutting
subtle.
Edge.
Like even people that have got a point, when they sort of harvest that idea, it's always going to feel a bit sort of overdone, isn't it, now?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Night of the Living Dead, funnily enough, is in the public domain. So if you go on the Wikipedia page for Night of the Living Dead, you can watch it on that Wikipedia page.
You?
Yeah. There's a whole stream of it. It's because there was like some funny reason, I can't exactly remember why, but he couldn't get the copyright for it, so it just lapsed, and it's another reason why it's difficult to find a really good copy of it, because you can.
Until the Blu-ray Criterion Blu-ray came out.
Oh really? There we go. So that'll probably be one to get then, because there's a lot of releases of it.
His films are quite difficult to get on Blu-ray. Like Day of the Dead. That's the shopping mall one, isn't it?
The Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead. Yeah. That one I've got like a Dutch Blu-ray version.
Oh really?
I don't know if it suddenly got easier, but Criterion released the Night of the Living Dead original on Blu-ray, which is again, brilliant. But
sorry, slight sidetrack there about
no, it's great. It's a welcome one. I remember you telling me that before, but it's interesting that. And if you haven't seen it, then there you go.
So Wikipedia.
Get yourself on Wikipedia. Yeah.
Literally. It's funny, like the whole film was just there. Like,
that is weird.
Yeah.
It's strange.
But no, Romero is definitely a fantastic example of someone who sort of embraced for his whole career dystopia and extreme examples of the way society is and the way he feels society, the kind of direction he thinks society's heading. Great kind of selection of films. Even the later ones, like Land of the Dead's really good.
Oh yeah, I quite like that one. Yeah.
There's the last two I've not watched. I think they were quite hastily put together, but nonetheless, like it's a Romero zombie film. So
it's interesting to see him try and sort of slot back into that landscape that he pioneered. Certainly when we talk about this idea that satire and dystopia can be overdone. I'm thinking like Black Mirror, for example.
I was just thinking about that,
Black Mirror started out as quite a sort of powerful
Yeah, Channel 4.
Yeah, like, you know, it was like gripping, like, and now it's just like, I don't know. I've got a lot of time for Charlie Brooker. I love him a great deal. I
think he let it. He sort of left it to Netflix and other people.
It's just like it don't know. And we sort of talked about already in the context of, like, you know, obvious potential for being contradictory when you operate within this sort of system. But it just doesn't feel. I don't know. There's something that just doesn't feel particularly organic about it. It just lost something. I think it could have done with just not being as many episodes as it ended up being, as many seasons. Because I think it's a hard sell to keep doing it. Because eventually you're going to start becoming almost like a parody of yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think modern satire is not quite as good.
No,
or dystopia. I just feel like it. You know, everyone's sort of aware that phones are bad, but it's become popular to say phones are bad. So the satire and the discussions about those kinds of things don't need to be particularly subtle or thoughtful, because everyone's like, oh, my phone's bad. You know, despite the fact they still use it, you know, they have this sort of fetishized view of themselves that one day they're just going to throw it away and go and play with badgers all day in the field. You know what I mean? Animals are farthing wood. You know, like...
Till you realise you're cold. You want to go
and badgers don't want to play. They'll just bite your genitals off.
Give you TB.
Exactly, It's probably more common. But you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it's always become like a marketing thing, like dystopia. Like, I mean, that's the great horror of it, I guess, of this sort of system, is that it is very good at monetizing cynicism about the system. And we've talked about this before, but, you know, I think personally in the case of that sort of late stage Black Mirror, it's just, I don't know, it just feels like it's not making any effort anymore.
I think that there's a couple of episodes I've seen recently which are poking fun at the very thing you just said. They're literally poking fun at themselves being a shadow of it, their former self.
Right, okay.
So it's just self-perpetuating, and it's just meta within meta, and that isn't necessarily clever either. Like, it's a bit irritating.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I know. I get that you're self-aware. That doesn't mean you should carry on doing it.
Yeah.
There's some gems in there, like the odd episode is good because it's got like quite a singular vision, and it's quite It's usually the ones that look cheaper.
I agree. Yeah. The cheaper, more ground level ones are the better ones, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And the more abstract ones, I think, are the ones that still succeed in my eyes. But the majority of them are like kind of sort of eye roll inducing these days, I think.
We're talking about a TV show.
Oh shit!
What are we doing?
Charlie Brooker, links to film. He hasn't done anything film related.
He's not made a film. No.
Get on it, Charlie, so we can talk about you on this podcast
more, because I love the guy.
Yeah, me too.
Got a lot of time for him.
Whilst we're on the discussion of not films, actually, there's a great dystopian thing, sort of piece of work that you love as well, that I want to bring up quickly before we move on.
Yeah.
And it's David Firth's Time.
Okay.
It keeps popping into my head when we're talking about dystopia, and that's a great example of like an extreme version of, you know, of what people were worried about, or like never having enough time, and who you give your time to, and it's a very literal. But because of the style of his cartoons, it sort of really works, and is absolutely hilarious as well.
I think what I love about him, I mean, I think he's a real genius. Like, I really love David Firth. I mean, his sort of, obviously everyone knows him for Salad Fingers, which just leave that. That's not, you know. His best stuff is like Time and World Within a Sock and his health videos. You know, like, I just think what makes him so good, alongside his very distinctive sensibilities, is that it feels like it's coming from like a sort of mind besieged by sort of rage and anxiety. And it's sort of like this. It's sort of like channeling his body, furiously clicking away on his own in his bedroom. I mean, I don't know how he operates these days, but, you know, it just feels very singular and very personal. And it's not sort of beholden to anything or anyone. It's just his vision, his view, and it's a really good little inclusion.
Yeah, I thought I'd bring it up because, seeing as we're talking about dystopia, if you haven't, just type in David Firth Time on YouTube and watch it. It's really, really good. And you're right, it is a very singular sort of, untainted by any kind of form of media conglomerate.
I think he would, immediately reject it, wouldn't he? I think if he sensed that it was going away from what he wanted to do.
He's sort of like the Aphex Twin of Flash cartoon. He's very much exists within that realm. Anyway, I mean, the other thing that I keep thinking about, the other film I keep coming. I've only seen it a couple of times, but Clockwork Orange keeps coming back to me. It's like a really great example of a dystopian future, and it's not even like that heavily. The production design for the exteriors, they just went to like brutalist areas of London, I think, and shot it all there. So it's sort of weirdly has its place in the past as well, even though it is set in I don't know what year, but it's a bizarre enough sort of version of the future that you can't really ever place it, and it's kind of I mean, it's based on a novel, I know, but
Anthony Burgess.
That's right. Yeah,
I bought that novel years ago when I was probably in my late teens, and tried to read it but couldn't read the language because a lot of it's in. Is it Droog?
Yes, it's all in that language.
Is it the name of that? Is that the name of the language? Is that what they call each other?
Droogs. Yeah, I think that's his word for mates, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't remember what the language is called. More stellar research. But and I never have attempted to since, because I just goes on top of a huge pile of ever-growing books. And it's actually quite small as well, so I think that's probably the reason why it's got sort of lost. But I've not seen the film for a very long time. Again, that's probably like a uni film. It's a very interesting way of depicting the future. I think it's just quite menacing. The whole film has an air of menace about it, and that's what people remember. People remember it for its sort of sexually explicit scenes. Go back and watch it again; it's not that bad, even for its time. It got banned in the UK for its content until like 2002 or something. But I just think that's a really interesting, unique vision of the future. Obviously, Kubrick is he gets his ideas on the screen, doesn't he? I mean, it's just like it's a good example of how generating an atmosphere can contribute significantly towards that sort of idea of dystopia. And the reason I like it, and I think this extends to other dystopian films I like as well, like 28 Days Later, like it just generates an atmosphere. It it sets a tone really early on and runs with it, and it makes you think that you're existing within a different period of time. And that really helps with that sort of dystopian feeling. It aids in the immersion, doesn't it? You're definitely sort of you're settling into the world, this version of a world that has surrendered to hyper-capitalism or surrendered to greed or war or whatever. I agree. That's interesting.
I can't remember. It's going to annoy me.
I can't remember.
There's a few novels that are written like that. Like Requiem for a Dream is like that as well.
Is it?
Quite often there's just no full stops. It's just like stream of consciousness type stuff. Very intense.
Okay.
It's meant to give off the the feeling of being like addicted to heroin, I think.
Okay.
In the case of Requiem for a Dream, anyway. And they have like Train Spotting, which is just like written in a kind of phonetic fashion.
Oh yeah, like Glaswegian.
Yeah.
I've not actually read Trainspotting. I've read a few of his other books, but that's the one I've not read.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. I mean, I'm biased, but it is fantastic. It is a classic.
You talk about environments. I mean, think like Blade Runner is a pretty good example of that as well, isn't it? The sort of environment. I think the weight of the environment in those films. Every time I rewatch that movie. I mean, it's been a while, but last time I watched it, the weight of the environment is so significant to the power of that film. Just the huge sort of neon-drenched vistas and the sort of rain that pounds it, and the sort of giant sort of advertising. The ever-present sort of looming sense of it's still trying to sell something, even in this sort of nightmarish vision of smoky, rain-battered. Urban landscape. I don't know, like it's just to me like a stunning film, and I think obviously Ridley Scott is in that run of films, 79 and with Alien and
82
with Blade Runner. It's like his command over atmosphere in those two films is just some of the best the genre has ever seen, I think.
Oh, completely.
In terms of sci-fi, as well as sort of, I guess Alien isn't particularly dystopian. There's arguably dystopian themes in there, I guess. But
I think so. I think you could kind of argue that. I mean, it's exploration of space travel, so they're kind of going to uncharted territory. But the spaceship they inhabit suggests that the world they've left behind is quite in a bit of a mess.
Yeah,
I think
it's like lo-fi aesthetic, isn't it? Like how people in the 1970s future's going to be.
Yes.
And I think it's a vision of the future which is absolutely untouchable when done well. I mean, Alien is just, it's, you know, from top to bottom, it is just a work of design genius. Like, it's flawless in terms of design.
Think so.
And I think you might be right. And of course, the attempt to weaponize the xenomorph as well. You know, like,
we do our research here.
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah.
What is the alien in Alien? No.
Xenomorph. You know, like, I guess you could argue that about the sort of obsession to sort of control things and use them to your advantage, bend them to your will. And obviously in this case it doesn't work out.
Nope.
As the crew of the Nostromo finds out.
Blade Runner is like, again, unmatched in terms of atmosphere. I think it's interesting what they do with the idea that this city seems to be... It's Los Angeles. It's meant to be Los Angeles, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. But it's seemingly the sort of urban sprawl that's happened doesn't stop.
Yeah. It's like Dread, isn't it? Similar sort of thing. That's Detroit, isn't it, Dread?
Yes, but it's just nothing but
Is it
city.
Detroit? Or is that RoboCop?
Can't remember. They're both very similar properties.
So RoboCop is
Detroit. Yes. Yeah.
And Dread is Mega City 1.
Yeah, I think it's its own sort of fictional.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is that...
Off the cuff.
Yeah. But the idea that the cities have just expanded beyond, you know, you probably couldn't travel across one in by car in a day, sort of thing. They're just, and then anywhere that isn't a city, like in Blade Runner, is like a scrapyard or a desert.
Yeah,
and it's like I don't like the idea that we've sort of harvested all of the greenery on a planet, but like makes some good imagery.
Yes,
and kind of sort of soulless but interesting music, and also. It means that it gives the characters an excuse to look for something sort of real and genuine.
Yeah.
In a world of artifice, it's kind of a very intense metaphor.
That's good.
That's what I think about Blade Runner. Anyway, he's.
If I wasn't so full of potato, I'd come and kiss you right now.
I was very sort of Byronic of me.
I think you're right. You think about the tenets of dystopia. So you've got like dehumanization, destruction of the natural world. Through that, either like a dehumanization in the sense of power structures. So as we've sort of said before, a world dominated by corporations, a totalitarian society. That disempowers vast majorities of the population, but is suppressed either by the needs of those people or the sort of needs that they think they need. Through mass marketing or something. Again, Blade Runner probably is a bit like that, I think.
Yeah, you don't follow an awful lot of other people. Everyone else in the city seems to be under the spell of something.
Yes.
It's only Deckard that is a kind of...
almost awake.
Yeah. Which is kind of another interesting thing about Blade Runner is like, you can't really trust anyone in that world.
Or they're sort of like overtly oppressed.
Yeah.
A film that's just come to mind. What's the Christian Bale film?
Equilibrium.
Oh, remember that?
Yeah, I do. Jesus,
God, I didn't think I was ever going to mention that film.
Well, I mean, it's quite very of its time, kind of 2002.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
Post Matrix.
Just a Matrix rip-off. But with not without merit either.
No, I mean, it's been a really long time, but Gordon, our dear friend Gordon, used to absolutely love...
Did he? It's such a Gordon film.
That would be on his list of films to die on a hill for.
Oh, yeah, completely. Well, I'm with him there.
Yeah.
One thing, there's something inherently contradictory about the nature of the film, though, in the sense that it's like... So for those that haven't seen it, Christian Bale resembles this sort of elite, sort of special force that, helps to... sort of protect a society that is devoid of emotion.
That's it.
Devoid of and any sort of manifestation of emotion. So art, literature, all these things that are so sacred and dear to civilization.
Yeah.
They're extensions of our sort of thoughts and our passions and our worries. None of that's conducive in the eyes of this sort of dominant sort of hierarchy to like a sort of functioning society. And Christian Bale plays this sort of elite special forces guy who's the sort of goes in and kills the rebels, these sort of dissident rebels who are sort of trying to combat this regime. And they're giving, like, is it some kind of medication to stop them having emotions or something?
It's like sort of B vitamin like pills.
It's funny. I can barely remember the plot to fucking Clockwork Orange. But I can remember this. But as the film goes on, he starts to feel emotions, and then he ends up becoming the sort of saviour of humanity.
I haven't seen that in a very, very long time.
But it's quite clear that even from the outset that he's showing emotion. I remember thinking, like, even like a performer that as solid as Christian Bale, like,
I mean,
so obvious that that he shows emotion.
Yeah, he's got kind of desires and wants and needs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which is very sort of riddled with plot holes, if I remember.
Yeah, it doesn't sort of it doesn't reward someone who digs deep.
Yes,
I think it's one of those, again, in that sort of classic early 2000s style. You shouldn't dig deep. What's the point?
Yeah. It's funny, like, dystopia can mean obviously, like you say, the kind of an oppressive force, or like totalitarian. I'm thinking like V for Vendetta. Is M a bit like that as well? I don't know if M's
no,
Metropolis, sorry, not M.
Yeah, M's about a child killer.
Yeah, different film.
Yes.
Same director, it's just
Fritz Lang,
Metropolis on the end of the one.
Right,
sorry, yes, Metropolis. I don't know if that is totalitarian, but there's plenty of examples of dystopian fiction and films where that is the centre point.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's largely probably inspired by the events leading up to World War II. But then you've also got films which are kind of on the opposite side of that, where you have the people, the kind of masses being given too much power. I'm thinking like Children of Men, an example of that, where the kind of, there is still the idea of a government controlling the population, but at the same time it seems like the control has been basically just given to a mob, and everything as a result is sprawling and uneven, and as a result, it seems like they're being punished for it by not having any children. There's no children in the world, and I love that film, actually, Children of Men. I'd like to discuss that at some point, maybe today if you have time. I just think it's one.
No, I do.
I think it's really, really, that's probably one of my favourite dystopian films. Actually, just because of, like, the cinematography as well. It's got that sort of documentary feel to it, and it's not afraid of letting sort of flecks of blood get on the lens, and it just feels very real and very, like, round the corner. A really unique idea, just the idea that babies have been born for 18 years and what that would do to the world.
Yeah.
And, like, also there is a kind of idea in that film that Britain has regained its patriotism. Because there's like a video on a bus in that film where it's like the world has collapsed, only Britain soldiers on. It's just such a unique vision of the future. I think that's a really, really good example worth mentioning. I can't remember if I've talked about it before. Maybe I have.
We're 51 episodes in now. I can barely remember.
I probably have. Yeah.
Barely remember we did an episode 50.
Yeah.
Apart from ranting about culture.
It's just good. There's some like religious stuff in there. Like, it doesn't ever kind of throw it in your face, but it's very, like, the symbolism in it, and the idea of there's like a joke they make about Immaculate Conception that actually sort of weirdly I sort of think maybe isn't as funny as as is surface level seems to be. But I just thought I'd mention that one quickly.
It sort of focuses on the idea, doesn't it? If you gave power to people, what would happen? But would the people sort of surrender to the same wants and needs that the previous system subjected them to, but drip fed sparingly? Or would they sort of, now that power structure is gone, they can focus on sort of supporting each other and helping each other?
There's a lot of things. There's a sort of idea in it where that, I think the idea in Children of Men is that the power that has been provided to people who has actually kind of just split. People have split off into factions, and you have
like Civil War.
A lot like Civil War actually. there's a sort of the idea that these kind of guerrilla groups have rounded up refugees and stuff, and it's just brought out the worst in people. And again, Civil War explores this idea a little bit as well. I don't think in quite as much detail. I think Children of Men is much better.
There's sort of one particular scene, isn't there, with Jesse Plemons?
Which is really great, and it was over marketed. I think that scene.
Yeah,
they should have left.
Killed the scene a little bit for me. I had a bigger. I think that was one of my bigger problems with the film more broadly, actually.
Oh, the way it was marketed.
Yeah.
Used AI, the marketing.
Yes, I saw that. It didn't go down too well, did it, in this sort of creative realm?
No.
No, it's interesting, actually. Yeah, I thought about that sort of, that subtle difference. Another element, I guess we sort of talked about it, would be technological innovation.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So technical innovation through, as a result of, is it the arm of a hierarchical system that is oppressive, or or is it something that's broken free from its sort of masters and subjected its forward them to subjected its former masters to a regime of terror, like Terminator, obviously.
Do you know what the first film that I thought of wasn't Terminator, it was iRobot.
We're doing that now. There's so many great examples to pick from, but we're going for fucking Equilibrium and iRobot.
I don't know what we're thinking. I don't know what I'm thinking with that, actually.
I remember watching that film in the cinema, and the one scene that really got the crowd going was where he sneezes and says, "I'm allergic to bullshit."
Oh yeah, it was like,
and that was like peak Will Smith, and everyone was like, "Oh, Will," like fucking honestly, like arcing ropes in popcorn. Like people just loved him back then, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
He couldn't put a foot wrong.
No,
or a slap wrong.
Yeah, I think right up until sort of 2012, 2013, people rallied, wholly behind him.
Yeah,
and that's sort of stopped now. But he was a very, in terms of box office receipts, he was one of the most successful actors in the world for a really long time.
Yeah, he was a big draw.
Yeah.
And he did a bit Dystopia. Did
Wild Wild West? No.
No. What the fuck is that? I Am Legend. Yeah.
Interesting idea as well. I like that idea. They didn't see it through in I Am Legend.
No, because the book's vampires, isn't it?
Yeah, the book's a lot more vampiric, and also the idea is obviously this is actually quite a well trodden idea as well, but I think it's a really great example of it. Is just the idea that humanity is the problem now.
Yeah.
We're not the solution anymore. We're actually the oppressive, the reason, and as a whole, like we're the monsters.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very common recurring theme in dystopian fiction. Is
yes.
Oh my God, we've become the monsters ourselves.
Yeah.
But I Am Legend threw that away. It's a shame. There was a really weird thing about a cure at the end.
Yeah. Is there like a deleted scene or an alternate ending where like he talks to the head zombie or something?
Yes, there is. I've seen it. Yeah. It's more interesting. It's not very good still, but it's a more interesting ending, I think.
He's like, sorry or something.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, mate.
Obviously, to me, you're quite grotesque.
Yeah.
I mean that,
Yeah.
That'd have been funny.
And he threw a dog in as well. If you want to sort of cobble together sort of, if the film is sort of lacking in emotional resonance, throw a fucking dog in there and have it killed at some point, and that'll get some tears in the audience.
Yeah. So
cheap, I think. It's a cheap narrative device.
The amount of people I've talked to say, I can't watch I Am Legend because of the dog.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's like, the dog's probably still alive now. You know that.
Is probably quite. How long does German Shepherds live for?
Actually, maybe not. I'm thinking cats, 20 years.
German Shepherd, I don't know, like 10 years maybe?
Yeah, so the dog's dead in real life as well.
So get a grip, you lot. So we talked about a lot of these themes and ideas and the sort of tenets of dystopia, oppression, technological innovation, destruction of the natural world. Obviously, I imagine there are lots of sort of offshoots to that, but for the sake of the discussion and keeping it less than 2 hours, a lot of those things seem to be reoccurring themes in Garland's work.
Yes,
both as a writer, screenwriter, and a director.
Completely, yeah. Even going back to The Beach a little bit, the idea behind The Beach, the novel, is that you can't, preserving a paradise is futile, and that's a very dystopian idea because it's not a very cheery theme. There's no redemption there. It's just like human beings ruin places.
Yeah.
And then you have obviously 28 Days Later, which weirdly came out after 9/11 but was shot before. So a lot of the imagery in 28 Days Later is actually inspired by foot and mouth, the outbreak of foot and mouth, so a virus threatening humanity in that fashion. 9/11 came out, changed everything. It became about sort of cities being vulnerable and stuff. But so there's that with 28 Days Later. I haven't read The Tesseract. I don't know about that one.
No.
But then, Never Let Me Go as well. Have you seen that?
I haven't, No.
It's quite good. It's morbid. It's pretty brutal and bleak. A lot of his films are. Like, a lot of people say that he's not very good at endings, which is absolutely a fair criticism. I do just think that he has quite a bleak outlook on the world in general. So quite often his endings are a bit drab and a bit like Jesus.
Yeah.
But Never Let Me Go is quite. It's sort of a weird mix of almost sort of Jane Austen style romance, country house style stuff, and then like this weird vision of the future where I think orphans are getting bred for, like, their organs are getting harvested or something, but it's only hinted at in the film. It's kind of hinted at the reason that they're going to be, basically they're getting killed for their organs. But it's a bit of too much of a character study to have the chops to full on explore that idea, I think.
He does tend to sort of, the dystopian elements in lots of his films are often like a looming shadow.
Yeah.
They don't tend to be present in terms of really grabbing the narrative by the scruff of the neck.
Yes, there's a lot of character stuff in it, in Civil War included. Like,
definitely,
more
and
so
that was
than I was expecting.
Yeah, that was sort of one of my slight niggly issues with that, actually. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Dredd, I love Dredd. I think
Dredd's great.
It's a great,
fantastic.
Film.
Yeah, great film. A vast improvement on the original.
Yeah. Completely, and really good singular vision. Even though he didn't direct it. He wrote it. He wrote it, and I think he was really heavily involved in production as well. Ex Machina, like, I think if we, when we were talking about technological innovation, that is his most overt example of that.
Yeah.
That kind of vision of the future.
That sentience, isn't it?
Yeah. Have I talked about that ending with you before on this podcast?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so.
Garland was in an interview and he was like, I'm a bit annoyed actually because I put something in that film that no one picked up on. Basically, because there's a whole kind of theme running through the film as to whether Ava, the kind of robot in it, is sentient and can think and feel for herself. And there's a bit at the end where she's walking seemingly, she is alone and she smiles. And so that is his way of saying yes, she's sentient.
Okay, yeah.
And he was like really annoyed that no one picked up on it.
Did you?
No.
No.
I watched it again. I was like, oh, she does. Yeah. So she just like, there's no one around her, and she smiles, and you're like, oh, so that's It's really cool. It's actually a really cool moment, but it got lost in the, because I think everyone's still gutted that Domhnall Gleeson had died, or had been locked in the bleak ending again. Bleak ending.
Yeah.
Annihilation.
What was Oscar Isaac's character?
He gets stabbed.
That's it.
By Ava.
That's it. Yeah.
Because he's a bit of a sort of tech nerd billionaire. Those sort of archetypes.
Again, something that's quite a common theme.
Yeah.
In a lot of satire.
Completely. Yeah.
As we seem to be in the beck and call of these types.
Silicon Valley sort of.
Yeah. You
hoodie wearing.
Your Musks and your.
Yeah.
Who's the sort of weird guy that owns Facebook?
Zuckerberg.
That's it, Zuckerberg. Yeah. What the fuck's going on with my memory? Although there's nothing wrong with not having his face in your memory.
Yeah, so, I think that's a blessing, if anything.
We seem to be in a weird world where, there's like a growing contingent, particularly men, that seem to think these people are brilliant.
Completely. Definitely with Musk, and even with, like, I think Bezos gets idolised just because of how rich he is.
Yeah,
he hasn't actually particularly done anything good for the world other than we can order.
If he'd stayed in space, that'd be his. If he'd stayed in space, that'd probably be his first good.
have been quite
contribution.
Good. But I suppose if we want to buy a set of dumbbells, we can just do it on our phones now. That's quite nice, isn't it? Amazon Prime. Apparently, Fallout's quite good.
Yeah. Both. So, nuclear fallout and the purchase of dumbbells.
Yeah,
both not great for the environment.
No, definitely not. No. Yeah, you're right, and I don't think Garland does admire these people. Because he ultimately, I think he sort of tries to separate. He's fascinated by it, but I think he does try and separate himself from idolising them as well.
Yeah, I think he does sort of straddle a line between fascination and sort of being appalled, but he doesn't do it in a way that's overt. I think I was reading an interview about him in the context of Civil War, and I think he had like a sort of former Navy SEAL, was like a military advisor.
Yeah.
And he was talking about his relationship with him. And I think this former Navy SEAL's going to make his own film.
Is he? Right, okay.
And he was saying that ideologically they're very different people, but they work together quite well.
Yeah.
And I think that might speak to his process as a director, as someone, or like the themes that he explores. I think whilst he might have these sort of obviously deep concerns about the nature of things are going, like tech gurus or AI or politics.
Yeah.
He doesn't plant his flag in any ground ideologically, to speak. I don't think.
No, I agree. I don't think he does either.
Which I think can be
he asks a lot of questions.
Yeah, but he doesn't necessarily commit to an answer, which I sort of admire in one way. But again, in the case of Civil War, I found that a problem. But
no, that is interesting. I didn't, but we'll talk about this in a second. Have you seen Devs? Actually, it's his TV series. It's Alex Garland's TV series.
No,
that's good. That's another example of him. He's imagining a version of the future where quantum computers are a thing. It's quite. I mean, again, sorry, it's not a film, but it is very good.
No.
I'm a big Alex Garland fan, by the way. I don't know if you're not like really. Anyone listening who hasn't realised that yet, you should have. No, but that's just a really good kind of vision of the future. And again, it, like you say, it doesn't plant its flag anywhere. It has this kind of tech billionaire character, but in this case, something really, really tragic's happened to him, and that informs his sculpting of new technology and how it works. There's some really great imagery in Devs. There's a bit where they have a discussion about how this pretty much disproves the existence of a god, and then they go that there's a way of this quantum computer visualizing the past, and they see Christ on the cross, and it's a really like haunting moment of just like this sort of parallel schools of thought running side by side. It's really, I really liked Devs actually. I thought it was great. Kaylee Spaney's in it, and she plays a 12-year-old boy. Yeah, really weird. So Kaylee Spaney, is that how you pronounce her surname?
No clue. I did wonder that actually. Not sure.
She plays Priscilla in Priscilla.
She's great in that.
Yeah,
fantastic.
really good.
And she was very good in this actually.
She was good in Civil War as well. Really, really good.
She's going to be one. I almost imagine her sort of being like the American Florence Pugh.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like starting out really well and
Yeah.
being an incredible, actress,
Yeah.
like Pugh is, but almost being too much.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
She's going to get oversaturated.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's not something I don't get annoyed about. But whenever I hear people mention Florence Pugh, people used to be quite enthusiastic, but people aren't anymore.
No,
I think because she's just in fucking everything.
She is. Yes.
People feel like they need a break from it, which I've always thought was quite a strange idea. But
no, yeah,
I can sort of understand it as well, though. I don't know.
I think, I mean, they're going to take every role that they can.
I'd be interested to see how, does she operate within this sort of A24 indie territory? Or is she going to branch out and make some sort of...
Black Widow 2.
Yeah.
No.
Hopefully not.
she plays a boy in it, like a 12-year-old. She was like 17, 18 when she made Devs.
And she's in her, 20s now, I think 25 maybe?
Yeah, that's right.
26?
Yeah. She does look very young.
She's young looking for her age.
Young,
yeah.
So I think it just that sort of casting decision just speaks to Garland's sort of indifference to a lot of. If it works for him, he'll include it, and he'll use the tools necessary, and he's not that concerned with getting It is just such an odd decision in principle, but the character's not trans or anything. It's just literally the character's like a 12-year-old boy, but she evidently looked right for it and played it right. So fair enough. And he does this kind of thing. He sort of behaves in that way, like the ending to Annihilation. He's like, I'm not going to explain it. Like the idea behind the ending to Annihilation is. And this is what he said. He's like, well, the idea is the alien didn't have an agenda at all. This sort of mass of organic matter that's sort of plummeted to Earth didn't have a thought or a feeling. They didn't want to take anything over. They didn't want to do anything. They have no sort of agenda. They just are. And that's what I think he's quite good at kind of conveying sometimes, is just like, sometimes you don't need to have an idea
or an answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Which works in opposition to the way I think that we respond to a lot of this kind of culture. Like, particularly we think about sci-fi and stuff. Like, we talk about this, just the sheer amount of fucking material on Alien and the resurrection of the Alien franchise.
Oh god, yeah.
There can be no uncertainty anywhere anymore.
No, yeah.
So on the one hand, as much as I have sort of niggly issues with the areas of Garland's approach, I kind of admire it, at least at face value, that he is like, well, no, fuck it. Like,
yeah, you're not going to get an answer.
Yeah, you don't need to know.
Yeah. I think it's great.
Which I admire, actually.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think I really get on board with that. I can understand why people find it irritating, though.
Well, we're just so used to having answers, aren't we? And I
think what does it all mean?
The internet. Yeah. I think the internet really ushered that thing in.
Yeah,
it accelerated the nature of discussions, and I think a lot of news outlets, particularly news outlets that are more sort of media focused, they make a lot of money through traffic, speculating.
Yeah.
And if they can sort of match that speculation up with the input from the creatives who made this world or franchise, then they're going to make a lot of money from it, aren't they? So it's just sort of almost an industry of unsubtlety.
It
seems to be incredibly pervasive across a broad scope of films and other things
Definitely
that we consume.
Started with Prometheus, I think, as well.
Yeah.
That was the start of it.
And it tried to be vague and like operatic, didn't it? With like the whole thing with the fucking guy dropping jizz in the water or whatever it was.
Birthing he like invents DNA, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Melts into DNA.
And I sort of admire the pomposity of it, really. I quite like the idea of revisiting Prometheus, because I know a couple of people that sort of quite defend it. Defend it.
And that's always on a rewatch. They said, "Oh, that's actually quite good." I just remember it being like, why am I watching a film which is clearly part of the Alien franchise, as much as it tried to make out that it wasn't?
Yeah.
Why is it about the birth of existence? Like, I don't need to. Yeah, I thought that was a bit rich.
Yeah.
I remember taking two friends to see that and being so gutted that I pretended to love it. That's happened to me a few times.
You've talked about that a few times. I remember going to see it in 3D, and because I've only got one good working eye, it didn't work.
Oh, man.
So everyone else was going, oh my God. And I was like, oh.
It's just blurry.
Yeah.
Is anyone else finding this blurry? Is it just me? Oh man.
Should we have a chat about Civil War?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So for those that sort of haven't seen it, the sort of title is pretty obvious, really. And I think the marketing has been pretty fucking obvious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
America has fallen apart. A despot ruler of a president has managed to piss off large parts of the American population, so much so that they have seceded from the United States of America, formed their own government, and this has created a civil war in the country. And not only are they, I think there's like 3 or 4 main factions. There are also sub-factions within these states.
Yeah, Western Forces is
the
primary
the
one.
Florida Alliance, I think they're called. But there are also sub-factions. So they make allusions to like Maoists taking over Portland and all this sort of stuff.
That's right, yeah.
So there's this idea that it becomes sort of like a free-for-all. As I guess historically, in certain cases, in certain revolutions or civil wars, or where things start to collapse, people grab power for themselves, on ideological grounds or whatever. And this seems to be what's happened in America. So America's a very sort of, it's divided, but the dividing lines aren't particularly explicit.
No.
And I think that's where the film derives a lot of its sort of uncertainty as these reporters, headed by Kirsten Dunst, who's this sort of battle-hardened, emotionally devoid, at least seemingly at first, war reporter, and this band of reporters travel across America to capture the eventual fall of this sort of despot ruler.
Yeah,
who is an obvious nod to Donald Trump.
Very obvious.
Or, obvious but still vague. I don't know. One of my problems.
Yeah,
but that's a little rundown of the movie.
Yeah, it's good.
What were your sort of thoughts? I want to say thoughts going in.
Yes, okay.
Because go for it.
I was apprehensive because I heard some good things about it, but I'd also heard that it was pretty sort of, I guess the right word to describe it, it was a bit wavering in its allegiance to anything, and which is what we'd be discussing earlier. Is he's sort of wishy-washy with like what the kind of core themes, ideas, and like political allegiance is. Like it doesn't ever really concretely give you anything as to what it means. And I had all this going in, so I was a bit apprehensive, but I'd liked Men, and not a lot of people liked.
Sorry,
I'd like Alex Garland's film Men, which we haven't actually mentioned. But
perhaps because for that reason I'm so fucking juvenile. I can't have you say that. Sorry.
I love Men, and it's but no, I enjoyed that film, and a lot of people didn't. And this, by comparison, had been very well received critically. So I was kind of like cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
And this film, well, yeah, there you go. That was my thoughts going in. Anyway, I loved it. I thought it was great. I think a lot of the things you've mentioned about your sort of issues with it weren't so much of a problem for me.
Okay.
I was won over by the human side of the story. Again, it's not perfect. It's pretty derivative of other work, like battle-hardened sort of veteran of the subject matter, so photojournalism in this case, and then you've got like this kind of young budding sort of protege taking on reluctantly. That's like a very well-worn story trope.
The sort of the divergent paths they take as well, in terms of Dunst's character becoming less sort of emotionally robust.
Yep.
And Spenny's character becoming more so.
Yes. Very overt.
Yeah, very easy to you saw that coming, I think.
Yeah. I like the metaphor they used. I don't know if you picked up on this. So Kirsten Dunst films takes her photos digitally, and which is kind of it speaks to her sort of battle worn, I guess, like get it done quickly, use the best possible equipment, the most efficient way of getting photos taken. And then Kaylee Spaney is the more kind of idealistic, romanticized.
Okay, I see where you're going.
She's romanticizing the profession.
Yes,
thus is using film in her.
No, do you know? I didn't think that at the time, but
I thought I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah. I thought that was a really nice touch, actually. The fact that she shoots on film, whereas, like, why would you in this day and age, or indeed in the near future? It's a stupid idea. Like, you can only take 30. It's 36 per roll, right? They play fast and loose with that as well. It takes a lot of photos at the end of this.
It's a sort of equivalent of like an Arnie action film where he never reloads his gun.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
I just think I was sort of bowled over by it. There were some really striking moments. There was a really good use of like a country song at the end, sort of as a helicopter sort of silently hovers around this military base. I really like that moment. The aforementioned Jesse Plemons scene was really great. I thought that was really like disturbing, horrifying. There's some horrible moments in this, actually, like the explosion at the beginning. Really like shocking. I think maybe partially because of like recent events, and we're getting a lot of sort of footage coming from the Gaza Strip and all that kind of stuff, and it's very like it sort of jolts you. Very real, visceral kind of violence. I am a biased man because I can forgive the film for its shortcomings, because it sort of was just like a really positive theatrical experience for me.
Okay, I can get behind that. And on the back of that, before we go into the nitty gritty, I think it's great to see these kind of films exist. And I think we talked about in the context of what's the Gareth Edwards film?
Monsters.
No, the robot one we went to see. We reviewed it.
Oh, The Creator. Yeah.
I didn't necessarily. I wasn't like blown away by The Creator, but there is like a sort of. I feel like the landscape is starving for those kinds of movies.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying these films are necessarily similar, because I would say The Creator is a lot more. It's a lot more in league with like more familiar sci-fi experiences. Than Civil War is. But I think. It's great to see this space being occupied, if not occasionally. I mean, it's not happening a lot. But, A24 continue to show ambition in this area. And I think, they're going to keep pumping money into these sorts of experiences, I guess, which I think is great. And I completely agree with you on that basis that it's great that this film happens, and it is a great theatrical experience.
Yeah.
One of the strengths of the film, I think, is that element to it, the sort of visuals, and all that sort of stuff. I sort of went in being semi-aware of some of the discourse around the film. I think it's pretty common for a lot of people these days, but I tried to keep away from it as much as possible. But my previous relationship with some of Garland's other work had informed that sort of feeling that I wasn't going to be 100% sold on it. It's not to say I don't like his work. I'm a fan of his for sure.
But I'm a bit more of a fan.
I think you are definitely. But I just think, upon watching the film, I thought, we talk about some of the sort of narrative unsubtleties, particularly in the divergent arcs of the two sort of characters. I think what saves them from being naff was that they're all performed really well.
They are, yeah.
Dunster's great. Spenny's great.
Yeah.
I can't remember the names of the other two chaps now who are in it.
Someone from Narcos.
Yeah. Forgot his name, but he's great in it.
Stephen McKinley Henderson.
McKinley Knight or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but he was great. Sorry, fellas. So I think the performance has really held together Garland's sort of shaky thematic impulses a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I did take more of an issue with the film's refusal to plant its flag in anything.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been so annoyed by that had the vague allusions to the real world political strife in America not been
right there.
Oh yeah, just sort of hovering above the film constantly.
And
I don't know, like I guess that might be an unfair criticism, because obviously the film is it's called Civil War. It's following from a point of history where we had perhaps one of the most divisive political figures in history at the helm of the most powerful country on earth and that created a lot of difficulty and exposed a lot of sort of festering wounds, which I think America is almost reopening in the face of another presidential battle, geriatric battle. Satire. I don't know. I just felt that was a bit of a problem in the movie. I think, I thought the sort of the moment with Plemons was pretty good. I think it showed that sort of darker side of America, that not only is there people in the vastness of this country who have very questionable views, they also have guns.
Oh God!
Which is a sort of potentially terrifying idea, and it's something that I guess a lot of Americans. It's another hotly debated issue in America: gun ownership. The sort of widespread nature of the sort of firearm, for me, felt like one of the more terrifying elements of the film.
Completely, and also the when they're fired, the sound design is so loud. Really quite powerfully done. That whole aspect of just the mix really jolts you awake.
Yes.
And also, like you say, the kind of presentation of extremism I thought was really interesting. I mean, it's boiled down to that one scene with Plemons, who is a kind of very overt racist. That's what I liked about it. Not liked, but that's what I kind of thought. It was noble. The film was noble for kind of presenting what would happen in a scenario in which there would be a civil war. Is like you wouldn't only get these kind of torn factions, you get some pretty grim, horrible
people's
come out of the weeds.
Ideological view is unshackled, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good way of putting it, and I think that scene is a really good kind of presentation of that, and one of the most tension-filled moments. The film is peppered with them, but that was the most effective one for me.
Yeah,
that kind of like horrible, anxiety-inducing. It's like really, really, you know, the future of all the characters is like thrown into balance and is very uncertain, and it's all, you know, that their fate is all of a sudden in the hands of a man with bright red sunglasses on and an assault rifle, and he's saying some pretty nasty stuff, and you just think, gee, like, how are they going to get out of this?
Yeah. And I guess that's the more sort of terrifying thing of it, is that access to that kind of weapon heightens the killing potential of people with these views.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's the sort of really terrifying thing. And, you know, I thought one of the strong elements of the film's dystopian or image of dystopia, I don't know, like, I just found the sort of vagueness of the sort of political instability, I don't know, it didn't quite work for me. I guess the film did quite a good job of moving away from that, because obviously it's more about,
it's a very character focused.
Yeah, character focused, about the idea, you know, wartime journalism, the impact of that in a world where people are it's so easy just to access imagery. You know, we see that now in modern conflicts. You know, people literally have like GoPros on their head when they're fighting, and you can watch it. You know, and it's almost like removed that element of artistry from the way in which sort of struggle is captured. And it, you know, I thought that was something that was quite interesting, I guess, because of the fact that phones were down. You know, obviously that maybe made them more, you know, like they once were in sort of conflicts of yore.
Yes, the documentation of it has to be
from
up to
skilled people, But it pushes away from that ideological thing. But I don't know, like, I didn't think that sort of more sort of satirical element stuck the landing too much.
Yeah. And I totally understand that. I think
it's vague, just wades into vagueness.
Yeah. It does. It is vague, and I think I do agree with you in the sense that the redeeming, for me, a redeeming factor of the film is its exploration of photojournalism and the morality of that. I think it handled that aspect quite well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
like, you know, the discussion that Kirsten Dunst has with Kaylee Spaney. I think Lee, she's called Lee.
Lee, yeah, that rings a bell. Yeah.
And she says, like, you know, she's taking photographs of bodies, and she says, if I was shot, would you take a photograph of me? I quite like that. That could have been hokey, but for me it wasn't.
I think it felt hokey because to me I thought, well, that's going to happen now. She's going to die and she's going to take a photo.
It did happen.
Yeah, it was like foreshadowing. Yeah, you know.
It didn't happen the way I expected, actually. But it did happen.
Yeah. It wouldn't be very cinematic if she was lying on the floor bleeding and she's just there like taking pictures.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of almost preferred that in a way.
Yeah. And then she runs out of film. Imagine that.
Yeah.
That would have been quite good.
Yeah. As good in terms of the themes of the film, not generally good.
No. Yeah. Not like a positive moment.
I really wanted to see Kirsten Dunst's character choking on the floor, writhing in her innards as Kelly Spenny's camera runs out of film.
Bizarre. I liked I didn't think the ending was particularly impactful, but I thought it was a serviceable kind of conclusion to the story. I liked how the president's response, like the interview that he gets, is like, "Please don't kill me," and that's it.
Yeah, it ties into that thing, doesn't it? That the old chap says is that, you know, these sort of dictators or despot rulers, when it comes to the end, they don't say anything powerful or profound. They're just desperate. And it's almost like a reflection of them as individuals, that it's just power they crave.
Exactly.
And to dominate. It's not about them having this sort of like utopian vision for the future. It's all about maximising power for themselves, which again, heavy-handed.
Yeah,
but I think Offerman did quite a good job of sort of conveying that in the sort of brief scenes he had.
Yeah, he was on set for about a day, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think I'd be interested to see. I'd be interested to kind of be an American and watch it, because I think we're, like, as Englanders, the kind of more unhinged people in our society tend to just be like yelling at fruit in Aldi, whereas obviously in America, like you say, these kinds of people these people have assault rifles, and so maybe that kind of fear would be exemplified by living in a society where that is acceptable. I don't know. What do you think?
That's an interesting point I'd not quite considered. I'm sort of cautious because I think it is very popular and fashionable for people in Europe to lament the imperfections of American society.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So there's an element of that. I think obviously the idea of everyone having access to that kind of killing potential would just terrify me.
Oh God, yeah.
It doesn't mean it doesn't happen in England, but like,
no, it's incredibly rare.
It's incredibly rare, but like, that idea of that, is terrifying. And I wonder what the sort of American response is more broadly, because it's doing well in the box office, isn't it? It's done really well.
It's A24's first #1 film.
Well, there you go. You see.
Yeah.
So obviously there's an appetite for it.
I think people are curious about its political allegiance, and they are probably going to be slightly disappointed by its focus on character as opposed to an overarching message. I quite like the presentation of the warfare in that sense, in that
it's brilliantly shot. The battle sequences are really well done,
and you never know who's firing at who, and I think that's the point. It's like a big horrible mess. It's not like blue team red team in Tenet. Do you remember that bit where it's like a visual obvious kind of, all right, okay, just so we know where the good guys are. Like, I liked the ambiguity there. Even
the messiness of combat, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
I think we're very much treated to sort of sequences of combat as these sort of sleek, and I think video games contribute to that as well. Actually, this idea of like we're being very clear, and there's almost like
literally hovering above them. And
there's like a sort of
almost
like an artistry to combat. Whereas a lot of it, no matter the training you receive, obviously helps. But like there's always going to be a sense of confusion and powerlessness that I think the film conveyed really quite well. That end sequence of the assault on the lighthouse. I watched a different film.
Robert Eggers film.
On the White House was, just from a cinematic perspective, and the way it sort of tied up all of the thematic loops in the film, no matter how vague they may appear initially, it was a fantastic ending.
I thought it was really
it's hard to argue with the spectacle of the movie, and I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about Garland's use of people who fought in battlefield situations, and so in that way
I thought
definitely
really
succeeded.
Tremendous. There's also a really another tense moment where they go to fill up their car with petrol, and there's those blokes with machine guns just sort of guarding it, and you never quite know if it was theirs or if it was just like if they've just taken it over. And that's one of the more dystopian aspects of it. That felt very Fallout 3.
And the guy that they've strung up used to be a mate of his from school, or someone he barely knew.
I liked that moment a lot. I thought that was really like palpable tension, and that's meant to be like a moment for Kaylee Spaney's character of kind of realizing like just how nasty the job can be.
Nasty people are, and
and how you'd navigate a situation where like you yourself are in a lot of danger, and potentially innocent people getting tortured and killed. I liked that a lot. I thought that was really good. And there's a really good shot of a helicopter going across DC. I think it looked like CG, but it was very well done.
Was that when the Apache comes down and that's great.
That's really cool. It's all shot in Atlanta, so I don't quite understand how they pulled that off. I dug it. I thought it was really. I can't wait to see it again. Actually, I'm really looking forward to watching it again. But I would say don't expect answers, just questions.
But I mean, are answers important? I don't know. I mean, we talk about the need for ambiguity in cinema, and then we go in, then I go and sort of slag it off for that ambiguity. I just didn't feel that, because ambiguity, to achieve authentic ambiguity in film is an art form in itself.
Hard to
achieve.
And
I just felt
Birdman kind of like.
I
liked Birdman, but that was
But I just feel like I just think the ambiguity sort of thematically didn't quite stick the landing for me personally. But it wasn't enough to dislike the movie. I want to make that quite clear. I feel like I've been quite negative. I think the performances were great. the last sequence is, just from a technical standpoint, incredibly impressive. It does achieve a lot of the sort of feeling that a good dystopian movie seeks to inspire in its audience. That sort of feeling of horror, crooked society could slip into. I don't know. That feels a bit sort of vague to say that.
No. I think you're right. Yeah, it's just, I think from the standpoint of showing an audience what would happen should your kind of views turn to extremism. Like, that's what your loved ones are going to die. You're going to inhabit a country which is bombarded by random explosions and intense military intervention. That's what's going to happen. Like, it's not going to be pretty. Your liberty isn't going to come to you for a really long time if you are seeking that. I think that's another thing I liked about the film. It's just, and that goes back to what we were saying about the sort of messiness of warfare, and I just thought that was really instrumental in the kind of overall feeling of it. It's just such a horrible mess and such a nasty, unnecessary kind of way of doing things, way of getting things done, and it's just, that's what simple. If the film did have a message, that's it. Again, very simple, but I liked it.
It's also interesting as well, making it about a civil conflict in the most dominant superpower that is the head of a collection of powerful countries, included, that have this, I think, almost innate belief of the sort of spiritual, moral, and technological superiority.
Yes, yeah.
So and seeing that sort of crumble in the film, I think was quite interesting. Particularly on the basis of the way that we're encouraged to view the sort of conflicts of others in other parts of the world. A lot of which have been directly manipulated by former colonial or dominant powers, but the framing almost, it's almost as if it's lesser, of less importance. And I think the thematic intensity is heightened by conflict being the same in this country that is so used to sort of exuding this sort of dominance.
Definitely.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I think everyone. I listened to the old Film Angles.
Oh, I've not heard it yet, actually.
Yeah, Alex had expressed a lot of sort of same sentiments as you. Not. There's some different kind of opinions he had as well. Obviously, we haven't just basically done their podcast, but he was kind of quite frustrated by the lack of a clear channel. The narrative would flow into, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what the view of the film is from the political right.
Same. Oh yeah,
because I just feel that maybe not planting your flag in any ideology would maybe be to the film's benefit in terms of encouraging a sort of discussion about the nature of such a sort of harshly divided landscape, politically speaking. But I still get the feeling this film wouldn't chime well with that, political right in America. Not that my finger's on the pulse with that, so I don't know, but I'll dig into that, and we'll pick that thread up in the next episode, maybe just briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know that there's been some kind of research into who's gone to see the film, and it's a real mix, politically speaking.
Okay.
Of people from all kind of walks of the spectrum.
Okay.
It's not just the left, apparently. So yeah, there will be a lot of sort of varying opinions on it that I'm sure are out there somewhere.
I bet Ben Shapiro said something about it.
Oh yeah,
he's probably burning toy tanks in a fucking bin again. So weird. Yeah. Right, outro.
Questing the cinematic void. There we have it then.
There we have it.
Yes.
Get among it.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I feel like it's not often that we disagree. I know we kind of found some common ground, but it's always interesting to hear your side of things when we sort of, our opinions differ on a film. So yeah, enjoyable.
Yes.
Yeah, we're adults. We didn't fall out. What about it?
Yeah, we won't speak for the rest of the week.
Yeah, next podcast will be in 12 weeks time. It'll be Alfie.
Just Alfie.
Yeah. Cinnaboy to Cinnaman.
What a Cinnaman. Yeah. Next week then, Love Lies Bleeding.
Yes,
Rose Glass. Her follow-up to
St. Maud.
We knew that.
Yeah,
we didn't have to Google that.
We didn't, no, because we've obviously paid $9,000 a year for a film degree.
Yeah, and we love it.
Yeah, we do.
I've not actually seen it, so I'm going to watch that as well.
Yes.
Don't know why it took so long for me to say that.
This sort of feels like a very different direction in terms of a sophomore effort.
Yeah.
Much like Under the Silver Lake, seems like it's kind of that territory, you know. It's a hard left. But Kirsten Stewart's career is fascinating.
Yeah, fantastic actress, yeah.
And it looks like a very kind of progressive, very sort of... in one way, you know, the kind of revenge film is incredibly popular and has been revitalised recently with, you know, John Wick and that kind of thing. But this one looks like it's gonna tread some new ground as well. So
yeah, it's a great trailer, a really, really good trailer. Funny, we talked about that in the context of Civil War, not having a great trailer. Just because it gave everything away
completely.
I think there was just enough style in this. It was all about style in this trailer, and I think that. Sort of evocative of Drive.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
You know, that sort of like neon drenched sort of style, which again was overused for quite a long time. But hey, I'm very excited for this film, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it. Actually,
absolutely, and I think St. Maud's worth a quick discussion as well.
100%. Yeah,
I get time to watch it.
Yeah, no, I might. I think the Blu-ray is quite cheap. I don't know why I'm telling you guys this, but
I do have it on DVD, but it's only DVD.
Absolutely not. Move away from that suggestion. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
As always, good to be back deep in your ears.
Yeah.
And we'll be back next week.
See you next week.
Bye. 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 Bye.